The, the reason for talking to you about women in urban spaces comes from this one astonishing data point that we saw and were pretty surprised. That was that female work participation in India, female work participation being defined as the number of women in the working age group, 15 to 49, actually working. So what happens to female workforce participation in India? It is among the lowest in the world in 2005 at 47%. 47% of women in the working age group in urban India are working. This is 2005. Bad, tragic. Then we check workforce participation in India in 2017. And the female workforce participation in India, after a decade of the fastest growth of education, of access to education, after a decade of that, the female workforce participation from 47% goes down to 27%. The only country in the world where with better access to education, with better transportation, with better everything, the fastest GDP growth that one has seen anywhere in the world or ever in India, after which the female workforce participation goes to its lowest ever. That is what triggered this thinking on what's happening with urban women. What's happening to the woman in India, down to what happened with this unfortunate girl last month. So the question, there are several questions that arise, and these are the questions that I have for you. That, take a guess. Crime against women in the last decade. Do they go up or come down? The obvious answer is they go up. But they go up by 100%. What is the single biggest crime against women? It's not rape, it's not molestation. It is assault by husband and relatives. That's like 60% of crime against women. We go to the Ministry of Women and Child Welfare, the Minister of Women and Child Welfare in India, and argue that this is not on. We can't have such tremendous increase in cruelty against wives or relatives. Why does this happen? One reason it happens is that in the Indian Penal Code, cruelty or marital rape is not a crime. So we say that in all these reforms we are doing, let's make it a crime. It's a crime everywhere in the world. The Law Commission accepts it. The only person who opposes it, and as a result it does not come into the law, is the Minister for Women and Child Development, who says that, domestic violence cannot be a crime. But ma'am, why can't it be a crime? Isn't it, distasteful? It is because, and I'm quoting her answer. This is because domestic violence is part of Indian culture. That's why it is not a crime to indulge in domestic violence. All right. Second, the Prime Minister announces that India should be or will be a $5 trillion economy by 2024. We are a $2.5 trillion economy. We will double in the next 5 years. it got a lot of us thinking. I must confess, I was on television when that announcement was made, and I was asked this question, that the Prime Minister has said $5 trillion economy in 5 years, what do you think? I said, this is a no-brainer. This is so very obvious. 2.5 to 5, we will grow like that. Because, we are growing at 8-9%. We have an inflation rate of 5-6%, a nominal growth rate of 14-15%. In 5 years, we will be there. What's the big deal? If he announces 7 trillion, that is ambitious. So I was very sanguine about that. What a great answer. And I came back in a couple of months, growth rate had plummeted to some God knows what. I mean, every day there is a correction to that. It went to 7, then to 6, then now people are even struggling to come to 4%. While inflation keeps itself very low. So now if you ask me that question, we will be a $5 trillion economy certainly, but by about 2040 or 44, if we maintain this growth rate. But what's the point? The point there is that then I came back and did a calculation on where are the fault lines? Why won't we double? And lo and behold, we lose $1 trillion. We lose $1 trillion simply because we have a female workforce participation that is 18% lesser than any country in sub-Saharan Africa. So I want to tell the Prime Minister this, that one quick way of reaching 5 trillion is do a little bit for women's safety. Third point. The 2019 elections happened and everybody celebrated. The big celebration was that Indian Parliament, in an unprecedented move, will now have the largest number of women members of Parliament. We have never elected 68 women in Indian Parliament. So everybody congratulated themselves that India now has 13% women in Parliament. 13% women in Parliament. I went and checked out our benchmarks. Our new benchmarks are Pakistan, Saudi Arabia. You know how many women in Saudi Arabian Parliament where they can't even drive, or maybe they can, nobody knows. 20%. We were celebrating 13%. Point 4. Among the lowest sex ratios in the world. Sex ratio is number of girls born per 1,000 boys. This is sex ratio at birth. Among the lowest sex ratios in the world, no surprises for guessing, is India. India goes, 2011 census says that India's sex ratio is 930. We have 930 girls for every 1,000 boys born. So 70 girls are disappearing before they are born. Take a guess, why do they disappear? Where do they disappear? Right? But we'll not talk about that yet. 930 girls per 1,000 boys. All right. Historical factors, cultural factors, modernizing economy, growing education sector. Therefore, when we count the number of girls among 1,000 boys born in 2018, we are looking for significant improvement. What do we find? That the sex ratio now is 896. And which are the states that see this decline? These are not your states of these lousy backward states of Assam, West Bengal, Bihar, UP. The fastest decline in sex ratio is in Gujarat, in Punjab, in Haryana, our most industrialized states. So, you move, I move the situation to the current topic. Right now, across the world, and particularly in India, the big issue, the big concern, the big villain is the migrant, isn't it? These migrants are these terrible fellows who are coming and taking away our jobs. Right? Here Trump, here Modi, here Mishra, you hear the same things. So therefore we start looking at the migrant population in India. If these migrants are so bad, these migrants are causing all the problem, and we have to therefore line up everybody to prove whether they have migrated or not, then let's take a look at the number of migrants. How many of us in India are migrants? Of 1.3 billion, 340 million of us are migrants. Large number. Where have we migrated from? That's the big question, isn't it? These millions of Bangladeshis who are causing this huge problem in India. Let's check out. Of these 340 million, how many of these have floated in from Bangladesh? 85% of these 340 million. 85% of 340 million migrants are intrastate migrants. You know, we don't even migrate outside our state. All our migration is within the state. 85% of India's migration is within state. 13% is across states. How many does that leave as international migrants? 2%. Highest rate of migration we saw from outside India was 1971. The largest ratio that we saw was in 1971, when we had a grand figure of 2.4% migrants. 81, 2.2, 91, 2, 2001, 1.9, 2011, 1.4. These few people who are walking in from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, these are not, millions of people. These are a few people. Like one figure I was quoting yesterday, I read it with a start. There was this answer that the Home Minister gave to the Parliament this October. This October, the Union Home Minister was asked, "Sir, you're doing these huge exercises of kicking out Bangladeshis, and you've been doing that for 10 years in Assam. 10 years. 10 years, the whole state machinery of Assam has done just one thing, which is identify these illegal fellows and throw them out. So in these 10 years, after you spent 1,200 crore rupees of state money and 8,000 crore rupees of people's money, 10,000 crores, $1.5 billion spent in identifying these illegal migrants, how many have you deported?" The answer he gives in Parliament last month is 4. Right? All right. So the migrant issue, right? Who migrates in India? And what is the single biggest cause for migration? So what I've established is that nobody migrates into India. That's one, why would anybody want to migrate into India? Right? In fact, if you see, and this is one, aside, but if you see South Asia, which is the country that is growing the fastest in South Asia? Bangladesh. With our suspect 4%, Bangladesh is growing at 8.4%. The per capita income in Bangladesh right now is about $1,100. The per capita income in Assam is about $400. You would be foolish to migrate to Bangladesh. In fact, some of us are advising Bangladesh to do an NRC. Right? So now what happens is that, what's the single biggest reason for migration? 46% of migrants, of these 340 million, migrate for one reason. The single biggest reason for migration. Why do people migrate? Livelihood, education, livelihood, 12%. Education, you know how many of us migrate for education? 1.2%. The single biggest reason for migration in India is marriage. 46% of these people who are migrating because they migrated. Of that 46%, how many are women? 97%. Now, these women who are migrating to cities after having got married, by the way, at what age do our urban women get married? What is the average age of marriage for an Indian girl? 18 is the legal age, right? 29% of marriages in 2011 were of girls who were below 18. 1/3 of our marriages are illegal marriages. 12 million girls in urban India, 12 million girls in urban India in 2011 get married below the age of 10. 10. Right? That's 12 million, 2011 census. So you have this 16-year-old girl from Jhumri Talaya who gets married and moves to this city. She is, even while she is migrating or immediately as soon as she is married, she is pregnant. Because in the entire North India, contraceptive prevalence rate is about 1.4%. She is in 54% of the cases hugely underweight. 54% of our pregnant women are underweight. Compare that to 17.5% in sub-Saharan Africa. She gets pregnant. All over the world, pregnant women add about 12 kilos to their weight during their pregnancy. Indian women add 7 kilos, half of what is the norm in the poorest parts of the world. Therefore, or not therefore, then some of us get very surprised that of the 26 million childbirths, 14 million are underweight children. How can this happen? But if it's a 34-kilo woman who adds half the weight that she is supposed to add, has no antenatal visits, has zero maternal care, works till 2 days before she delivers, why are we surprised that half our sons who we did everything for, are underweight? Weigh between 1 and 1.5 kilos. We lose, very simple calculations show that we lose about $500 billion just because of low birth weight babies. I'm just telling the Prime Minister, these are easy ways to get to 5 trillion. Right? Now, then, what is the single biggest manner in which you can improve? One single intervention that you can do to improve female workforce participation anywhere, in any city. Child care centers. That's been the single biggest intervention, the simplest, cheapest intervention. Delhi. How many child care centers will you find? Right? We did a count that in all of Delhi, which has about 80 lakh women, there are 12. When Kejriwal did this one simple exercise of providing free transportation to women, there was such hue and cry. Everybody was opposed to this. You will ruin the metro system, like damage the economy of the city. And and suddenly crime against women came down. It was a very simple measure. Everybody opposed it. Just free transportation for women. Oh, you're a house help, you're traveling 14 miles, and you are paying 100 rupees for your travel. Suddenly that 100 rupees is available to you. Anyway, so my last point before I finish this questioning session. Migration, which is one, as I said, one of the bigger issues today. In which categories do you see migration actually reducing? It's very interesting. If you see India's migration figures, when was the fastest rate of migration that we see post-independence? The fastest rate of migration that we saw was in the 70s. After that, migration has been coming down. We have, contrary to what most of us think, we are not flooding our cities. The rate of migration to big cities has actually been reducing. We are migrating, but at a slower rate. The fastest was the 70s. And 85% of that migration is within the state. We dare not go outside our state. And you have this slew of states saying that we will reserve 85% of jobs, 90% of our jobs for locals. It's now that competition is on. Gujarat said that, Madhya Pradesh said that, Maharashtra says that we will not allow interstate migration. The slowest migration, or the slowing down of migration, is the most prominent among the most urban lot. The only group where migration is slowing down is the Muslim. We have, India is 31% urban. Muslim India is 38% urban, more urban than the rest of the community. And that's the one where the migration is coming down the lowest. I don't know the answers to this. I don't know what the fears are. My hypothesis is that our cities are very unsafe. And they are very violent. And they are not welcoming of the Muslim or the woman. And these are the two most vulnerable urban communities. As I finish now, 5 more minutes, thanks. The contemporary point that I want to make is that now we are faced with this huge burden of the National Register for Citizenship. Now, why am I talking about the National Register for Citizenship when I am talking about women? If you see the recent policy moves that have been made, especially over the last 5 or 6 years, you will find that almost each of those policies is disproportionately anti-women. Remember demonetization? What happened with demonetization? Suddenly I was asked to prove that the money in my pocket is not black money. All of us. Look at what the presumption of guilt is. The onus of proof. You have to prove that you are innocent. That seems to be the leitmotif, that that all of us have to queue up and prove we don't have black money. Now prove that we are citizens. In Assam, after that whole exercise, when 4 million people were found to be non-citizens, in a state where the sex ratio is 910 to 1,000, why is it that 25 lakhs of those 40 lakhs were women? Why is the citizenship rule so much more anti-women than others? Go back to what I said earlier, that 97% of women migrate for marriage. What happens when you migrate after marriage? The first thing you do is change your name. When you go and submit your birth certificate at that national register, it says, you are not Sayyada Arifa, you are Sayyada whatever. Sorry, that's not your name. Remember demonetization? The number of women who were afraid to go and deposit their cash because their husbands got upset. Acha, you kept so much of money with you without telling me. Today, all of us have to stand up there, and the burden will be huge on women to prove that I am indeed so and so, that I have lived in this country for 300 years. With a gross enrollment rate in Assam of, for women, of 3%. 3% women graduate from high school and go to college. It's not so very different in the rest of the country. You know how many mean years of schooling does an Indian girl get? How many average number of years does an Indian woman go to school for? After all these advances, we are at about 6. In Assam, it is 3. So this girl has to go and show a certificate that either shows that I was born at so-and-so place, or a certificate that shows that I graduated from high school. That's 3% of the population. How is she ever going to show that certificate? How is she going to prove that she is a citizen of India? If she has a Bengali name, the
is that she is Bangladesh. That is why this particular move, just as the move with demonetization was, just as the move with this open defecation, this other big move, this big policy, everybody thinks it's a great thing to Swachh Bharat. What does it do? It shames you if you are defecating. No. You have these ministers, members of parliament, who said that what you should do if people are defecating in the open is go and film them. That is where women are the most vulnerable in urban India. If you think there is open defecation in Timbuktu or Dhubri Talaya, you have to come and see open defecation in Delhi. So, I must point out that these simple issues that stare at us, and therefore we should not be surprised that if Thomson Reuters does a ranking on the unsafest places for women in the world, rank number 1 is India. If the World Economic Forum says that on the gender index, 153 out of 156 is India's rank, or if the UN Human Development Index says that the gender gap is the highest in India, higher than Afghanistan, than Somalia. You take any index, then don't be surprised that in all these indices, India ranks at the bottom. India's real vulnerable minority is women.
When Arun Jaitley became finance minister, Arun Jaitley, the former late finance minister, whose great achievement, I must admit, that Arun Jaitley's great achievement was that he kept India's fiscal deficit under tight check. How do you keep fiscal deficits under tight check? By reducing expenditure in your budget. So in the first budget, Arun Jaitley had this huge problem of keeping India's expenditure low. And therefore he does this brilliant thing. He takes all ministries and sees which ministries shall I slash the budget for. And the 2 things that he slashes budgets in, the ICDS by 40%. The ICDS is the Integrated Child Development Scheme, down by 40%. And the other ministry down by 50% is Women and Child Development.